Shalom. Before we started, I want to give all glory, honor, and praise to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Hakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders at GMS. Peace, honor, and respect to you brothers that's out there laboring, edifying, rightly dividing the word in truth and sincerity. And shalom to you believers out there at the Aki and Akwathi. So today I'm going to wrap it up with the Maccabean Revolt, part 3. I've been wanting to get on this lesson, but my computer with the StreamYard was acting up. So here we go. I will be putting links for part 2, okay, on the Lord will on the screen. So if you haven't seen part 2, check that out. Of course, if you haven't seen part 1, you want to check that out. This is part 3. So let's get into it. Blow this up. All right. And we had left off with Antiochus IV dying. All right. I went all into that in part 2. Excuse me. And now his son, Antiochus V, Eupator, is going to be taking over. So here we go.
And died. The monarch's death meant that his son, the 10-year-old Antiochus V, was now Basileus of the Seleucid Empire, and there would be no small amount.
So as you can see, we got Antiochus V, Eupator, all right? And I looked up Eupator, and Eupator is, it just literally means of of noble father, okay? That's what, I believe it's basically nicknames they had because his father was Epiphanes. And then we went over that in part 2. But this is part 3. Let me see if I got another one. Yeah, so here we go. Of noble father. All right, because why? It was the name given to Antiochus V, who succeeded his father, the fourth, Epiphanes. All right, so I just want to get that definition for brothers and sisters. Here we go.
Of courtiers willing to influence the young boy for personal gain.
So when Antiochus V took over, he was young, as this guy's stating. And of course, when you have a young king, everybody's going to be looking to influence that young king. Real quick. All right. As you brothers and sisters know, if you don't know, I'm going to be playing a documentary, of course, going to be stopping you, giving you a little bit more context of what this guy's stating in this documentary through the scriptures. Lord willing, it's edifying. All right, so second Maccabees chapter 10, starting at verse 9, it says, and that was the end of Antiochus the fourth, called Epiphanes. Now we will declare the acts of Antiochus Eupator, who was the son of this wicked man, gathering briefly the calamities of the wars. So when he was come to the crown, he set one Lysias over the affairs of his realm. All right. Because like I said, he was a young boy. Okay. So ultimately, a young boy is not going to be able to rule properly. He's going to need advisors, guidance, and appointed him his chief governor over Seleucia and Phenice. All right. So now Lysias is over the affairs of the realm because he's an adult. And that's why it's stating here that he once he knew it, he went up and was like, hey, all right, he's king now. Let me go up here.
His death meant that his son, the 10-year-old Antiochus V, was now Basileus of the Seleucid Empire, and there would be no small amount of courtiers willing to influence the young boy for personal gain.
Heard what he said? Because he's a young boy. Brothers and sisters, Salakia, forgive me. Let me go grab some water real fast. All right, forgive me. Let's continue.
Suddenly, Lysias's priorities had shifted, and he was compelled to return to Antioch to secure control of the infant king in order to keep his power and influence in the royal court, which meant that the campaign in Judea was over. Due to his persistence, cunning, and some plain old luck,
I
Judea.
do want to stop it here because one thing I'm noticing about this guy is I don't know if he believed in the scriptures because of the things that he say. Because it wasn't luck, all right. What happened to the Maccabees? No, it was because of course, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shah. Matter of fact, let me get some that had came to mind. And I want to get this in the NLT. Psalms 20, starting at verse 6, it says, "Now I know that the Lord rescue his anointed king. He will answer from his holy heaven and rescue him by his great power. Some nations boast in their chariots and horses, but we boast in the name of the Lord our power." Right. As Israelites, we should boast in Yahweh, Yahweh Shai. All right. The Heavenly Father, Yahweh, that's our power. Okay. Esau boasts in his chariots, his military might, just as he did in antiquity, he does today. Okay. Verse 8, those nations will fall down and collapse, but we will rise up and stand firm. Right. When Esau come out of power, when he's falling down now, that's why America is going through a collapse right now. Okay. Which is falling down and is going to collapse. It's never going to rise again. A so-called white man will never, ever be in power again. The Arab, the Chinaman, the East Indian, whoever, they're going to fall down and collapse with this devil. But we, Israel, we're rising up right now, and it's starting with this word. Okay, that's why you have a great awakening. You got brothers teaching the word all over the world. Okay, you got brothers and sisters waking up, understanding the scriptures in its purest form. That's a part of our rise. But we will rise up and stand firm, right? And once we stand up and we're going to be firm, we're never going to fall. Okay, because when Yahweh Shah come get us out of this captivity, guess what? Israel will never fall into captivity again. All right. Those nations will fall down and collapse, but we will rise up and stand firm. Right. And that's exactly what the Maccabees did. All right. They stood firm. Okay. And it was all through the spirit and power of the Heavenly Father. All right. Now let's continue. Just wanted to make that point. It wasn't luck.
Maccabeus was victorious once more. With his victory at Beth Zur, he was able to march his army more or less unopposed to Jerusalem, which, ironically, he was able to stride right into because the Seleucid governor Apollonius had destroyed its city walls a few years earlier. Following this, the Hellenized and other Seleucid loyalists retreated
Let's run
to,
that back.
and some plain old luck, Judea Maccabeus was victorious once more. With his victory at Beth Zur, he was able to march his army more or less unopposed to Jerusalem, which, ironically, he was able to stride right into because the Seleucid governor Apollonius had destroyed its city walls a few years earlier. Following this, the Hellenized and other Seleucid loyalists retreated to Acre. Now firmly in control of the holy city, the Hammer of Judea entered the temple, destroying the altar to Zeus and the idols that had been erected during the reigns of Jason and Menelaus. His youngest brother, Jonathan Apphus, was installed as the new high priest of Judea. Among the sacred objects to be restored was the menorah, a golden candelabrum whose 7 branches represented knowledge and creation. It was supposed to be kept burning every night, but its light had been extinguished during the persecutions. However, the temple had been so thoroughly pillaged that there was only enough oil to keep the candles of the menorah burning for 1 night. Despite this, once lit, the candles burned bright and true for 8 full days. This supposed miracle of God is the cornerstone of Hanukkah, and to this day, when Jewish communities around the world light 8 candles on their menorahs, they commemorate each day the light burned for Judea Maccabeus and his freedom fighters. Jerusalem may have.
So, as you can see, hey, wait, let me do something.
I have actually been a customer of BetterHelp for a little over 2 years now, and I was able to get matched up with a therapist.
Been extinguished during the persecutions. However, the temple had the cornerstone of Hanukkah. Despite this, once lit, the candles burned bright and true for 8 full days. This supposed miracle of God.
See how he said supposed miracle? So, as you see, this is what really, this is how Hanukkah basically started. Okay. They had oil for a night, and that's the power of our power, man. That's the power of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah, man. Okay. It was oil for one night, but it lasted 8 days. All right. A light thing for the Lord to do. All right. So now let's get a little biblical, a little context. Okay. Let's get in this apocrypha. All right. So First Maccabees 4, they had the battle at Beth Sura. And that's when you get right here. Okay, the next year, verse 28, the next year, therefore following, Lysias gathered together 70,000 choice men afoot, 5,000 horsemen, that he might subdue them. So they came into Idumea and pitched their tents at Beth Sura. And Judas met them with 10,000 men. So you already know we got 10,000 men versus now score is 20. They had 70,000 men on foot, which is 60,000, and 5,000 horsemen. That's 65,000 men versus our 10,000 men. You see how the Lord was dealing? Okay. That's why it wasn't no luck. Verse 30, and when he saw that mighty army, he prayed. See, he prayed and said, blessed art thou, O Savior Israel. Right. Who didst quell the violence of the mighty man by the hands of thy servant David. Didn't Mattathias tell his sons to recall the acts of our forefathers? All right, meaning go back in the scriptures and recall whoever called on the Lord and was confounded. No one. Okay, and gave us the host of strangers into the hands of Jonathan, the son of Saul, and his armor bearer. Shut up this army in thy hand, Slakia. Verse 31, shut up this army in the hand of thy people Israel, and let them be confounded in their power and horsemen. That's why I got Psalms 20. What did it say? Some nations boast of their chariots and horses, these Edomites mainly, but we boast in the name of the Lord our power. See, first thing he did was pray. Okay, right here. I can't highlight it, but there you go. Verse 32, make them to be of no courage and cause the boldness of their strength to fall away, and let them quake at their destruction. Cast them down with the sword of them that love thee, and let all those that know thy name praise thee with thanksgiving. All right. So they joined battle, and there was slain of the host of the Lysias about 5,000 men. Even before them were they slain. Now when Lysias, check this out. Now when Lysias saw his army put to flight, and the manliness of Judah's soldiers, and how they were ready either to live or die valiantly, he went into Antioch and gathered together a company of strangers, and and having made his army greater than it was, he purposed to come again into Judea. Then said Judas and his brethren, behold, our enemies are discomfited. Right. They called on the Lord, and the Lord came through. That's the Lord is how we won our battles and how we lost. The Lord is the reason we in captivity is because the Lord put us here. It's not because the so-called white man is just so strong and so smart. No, it's because we transgressed against the laws and we got put in captivity. in many captivities, all right, every time. But the Lord will always hear our call. And the Lord is going to take us out of this last captivity, all right, through Yahweh Shah. Our enemies are discomforted. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary, because we always had certain men that got us out of captivity, you know. But hey, the king is coming. Yahweh Shah. Verse 37. Upon this all the hosts assembled themselves together and went up into Mount Zion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, all right, now this is getting into Hanukkah because they won the battle. All right. I'm just giving the context through the scriptures. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate and the altar profaned and the gates burned up and the shrubs growing in the courts as in a forest or in one of the mountains, yeah, and the priests' chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes and made great lamentation and cast ashes upon their heads and fell down flat to the ground upon their faces, and blew an alarm with the trumpets, and cried towards heaven. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the law, who cleansed the sanctuary and bare out the defiled stones into an unclean place. And when, as they consulted what to do with the altar of the burnt offerings, which was profane, they thought it best to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it. Wherefore they pulled it down and laid up the stones in the mountain of the temple in a convenient place until there should come a prophet to show what should be done with them. Then they took whole stones according to the law and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary and the things that were within the temple, and hollowed the courts. They made also new holy vessels, and into the temple they brought the candlestick and the altar of burnt offerings and of incense and the table. And upon the altar they burned incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlestick they lighted, that they might give light in the temple. All right. Furthermore, they set the loaves upon the table and spread out the veils and furnished all the works which they had begun to make. Now, on the 5 and 20th day of the ninth month, which is called Slakia, which is called the month Casalu, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the altar of the burnt offerings which they had made. Look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it, even that was it dedicated with songs and citharins and harps and cymbals. Then all the people fell upon their faces worshiping and praising the Most High of heaven, who had given them good success. And so they kept the dedication of the altar the 8 days, all right, and offered burnt offerings with gladness and sacrifice the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold and with shields, and the gates and the chambers. They renewed and hanged the doors upon them. Thus was there a very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. And that's basically going into it. All right, I know I read a lot, but just want to give a little context through the scriptures. All right, so now let's get it, because you can get that again in second Maccabees, the 10th chapter. Okay.
Is the cornerstone of Hanukkah, and to this day, when Jewish communities around the world light 8 candles on their menorahs, they commemorate each day the light burned for Judea Maccabeus and his freedom fighters. Jerusalem may have been taken, but the war was far from over. Seeking to keep his momentum, Judea besieged Acre in early 162 BC. He expected that Lysias, still locking horns with his political rivals in Antioch, would not bother sending a force to relieve the siege. He was wrong, and in a surprise to everyone, Lysias left Antioch with an army of some 50,000 infantry, 500 cavalry, and at least 30 war elephants. Maccabeus had a respectable 20,000 warriors loyal to him, so upon hearing this news, he broke the siege of Acre and marched southwards, meeting his foe on the hills outside of the town of Beth Zachariah. Confident in his numbers, and expecting the Greeks to be wizened to his guerrilla warfare tactics by now, Judah opted to, for once, match the Seleucid army in a pitched battle. This was a dire mistake. The Jewish warriors were no match for the Macedonian phalanx in the open field, and on top of that, the war elephants were striking deep fear into the heart of Judah's troops. In an attempt to inspire bravery in his men, the younger brother of Judah, Elizur-Haran, charged right into the Seleucid front lines, diving under the lumbering legs of an approaching elephant and stabbing into its soft underbelly. The beast was slain, but its corpse fell onto Elazar, crushing the Hasmonean warrior in one of history's more spectacular deaths. Despite this brave sacrifice, the Maccabean forces were still routed and driven off the field. Lysias was not able to savor this.
And that's, let's get some more context in the scriptures on that. You can find that in First Maccabees, the 6th chapter. And I'm going to jump around. I know I read a bit, in that last one, but I'm going to just jump around. So First Maccabees 6, I'm going to start at verse 17. It says, "Now when Lysias knew that the king was dead, he set up Antiochus his son, whom he had brought up being young, to reign in his stead, and his name he called Eupator. About this time, they that were in the towers shut up the Israelites round about the sanctuary and sought always their hurt and the strengthening of the heathen." And we have that today. We have people that's in high places, Israelites that's got a little rank in this world. Well, let's take a rapper and these acts of entertainers. They have somewhat status. They really are leaders of the people, all right? But they love strengthening the heathen, okay? Because even though we all, listen to rap sometime or like rap, okay, a lot of that is to our destruction, okay? But it's strengthening the heathen. How is that? Well, because it's number one, it's putting more money in their pocket. All right. Number two, it's spreading that thought culture, thug culture. Okay, that's in our communities. And these heathens at the top know that the more we away from our power and sin, okay, they're always going to have, us under their thumb. Verse 19. "Wherefore Judas and you all, and they basically sellouts. We got that today. All right. Wherefore Judas, proposing to destroy them, called all the people together to besiege them. All right. And that's where you get the siege of Acre. Now jumping to verse 21, howbeit certain of them that were besieged got forth, unto whom some ungodly men of Israel joined themselves." See, there's nothing new under the sun. The ungodly men of Israel joined with them. Okay. "And they went unto the king and said, How long it be that thou executes judgment and avenge our brethren?" Because those ungodly men was getting their ass, sliced up by the Maccabees. So they went to the king. All right. Now jumping down to verse 28. "Now when the king heard this," now this is after they besieged Acre, when the Maccabees, that was that battle that they was talking about. And then it said they didn't think Lysias was going to come back. "Now when the king heard this, he was angry and gathered together all his friends and captains of his army and those that had charge of the horses. There came also unto him from other kingdoms," see, "from the isles of the sea, bands of hired soldiers." So all these nations always been, in cahoots. Basically, that's where you get Psalms 83. All right. This is not just Edomites. All right. It says from the isles of the sea and band of hired soldiers. All these nations always been in cahoots to keeping Israel in derision. Okay. Verse 30, so that the number of his army was 100,000 footmen. Now they said something less in the documentary. That's why I'm giving you brothers and sisters context in the scriptures. Was 100,000 footmen and 20,000 horsemen and 230 elephants exercised in battle. All right, jumping to verse 32. Upon this, Judas removed from the tower and pitched in Beth Zacharias. All right, over against the king's camp. Then the king, rising very early, marched fiercely with his host toward Beth Zechariah with his armies, made them ready to the battle, and sounded the trumpets. All right, so now we're going to jump down to, no, I'm going to reverse. Yeah, I'm going to jump down to verse 40. So part of the king's army being spread upon the high mountains and part on the valleys below, they marched on safely and in order. Wherefore, all that heard the noise of their multitude and the marching of the company and the rattling of the harness were moved, for the army was very great and mighty. All right. So again, you had these Edomites and these other heathens that they came together. They're mighty against us. Then Judas and his host drew near and entered into the battle, and there were slain of the king's army 600 men. Eleazar, also surnamed Severin, perceived that one of the beasts armed with royal harness was higher than all the rest, and supposing that the king was upon him, that's why he took charge. All right, put himself in jeopardy to the end that he might deliver his people and get him a perpetual name. All right. Wherefore he ran upon him courageously through the midst of the battle, slaying on the right hand and on the left, so that they were divided from him on both sides. Which done, he crept under the elephant and thrust him under and slew him, whereupon the elephant fell down upon him, and there he died. Howbeit the rest of the Jews, seeing the strength of the king and the violence of his forces, turned away from them. All right, so that's the context of that right there. Okay, let's continue. Good.
The Maccabean forces were still routed and driven off the field. Lysias was not able to savor this victory for long, for in the following year, the hammer struck back, winning a minor victory over a Seleucid army at Edessa. This was not a crushing blow to the Seleucids, but once more Lysias had to return to Antioch to deal with his rivals. He was forced to compromise with the Maccabees, repealing much of Antiochus IV's religious laws to placate his foe, before retreating out of Judea.
All right, so you heard what. Now let's get a context in that. Because Lysias basically had to make peace because he had things going on. All right, but let's get it. We stand in chapter 6, First Maccabees chapter 6, starting at verse 50. So the king took Bethsura and set a garrison there to keep it. As for the sanctuary, he besieged it many days, and set their artillery with engines and instruments to cast fire and stones, and pieces to cast darts and slings. Whereupon they also made engines. Hold on, let me see something. Let me just check. Okay, yeah. Whereupon they also made engines against their enemies and held them battle a long season. All right. So this is just going into, how they was warned. Yet at the last, their vessels being without victuals, all right, is speaking on the king, all right, their vessels being without victuals, for that it was the 7th year, and they in Judea that were delivered from the Gentiles had eaten up the residue of the store. There were but a few left in the sanctuary, because the famine did so prevail against them that they were fain to disperse themselves, every man to his own place. At that time, Lysias heard say that Philip, whom Antiochus the king, while he lived, had appointed to bring up his son Antiochus, that he might be king, all right, was returned out of Persia and Media, and the king's host also that went with him, and that he sought to take unto him the ruling of the affairs. Wherefore he went in all haste. This is why he went and left. All right, he made peace. He like, all right, I'm gonna make peace with them. I gotta go and handle this situation over here. And said to the king and the captains of the hosts and the company, we decay daily, and our victuals are but small, and the place we lay siege unto is strong, and the affairs of the kingdom lie upon us. Now therefore let us be friends with these men and make peace with them and with their nation. All right. And again, just getting some scripture real quick because some came to mind. Now, when you go to Proverbs 16:7, it says what? When a man ways please the Lord, he maketh even his enemies be at peace with him. And we know the Maccabees' ways pleased the Lord. All right. Because ultimately they was fighting to restore righteousness in the land. Okay. They wasn't just fighting to fight. They was fighting to restore righteousness. All right. In those ways pleased the Lord. That's why they was able to win all those battles. That's why it'll be 10,000 of them and 65,000 of them heathens, and they'll kill them, or at least kill a lot of them, and then the rest will flee. All right. It look like if you got 65,000 men and I got 10,000 men, I should be gone. But it was the power of the Lord. All right. And that's what ultimately, a series of events happens where Lysias has made that peace and he had to go. The Lord could have had it play out different. Okay. Verse 58 again. Now therefore let us be friends with these men and make peace with them and with their nation. See? And a covenant with them that they shall live after their laws. See? And that's where it said in the documentary, he had to all the things that Antiochus IV put into play, he started, taking them out as they did before. Okay, they should live after their laws as they did before, for they are therefore displeased and have done all these things because we abolished their laws. Right. So the king and princes were content, wherefore he sent unto them to make peace, and they accepted thereof. All right, and that's where I just want to get that. Okay, let's continue.
Much of Antiochus IV's religious laws to placate his foe before retreating out of Judea. Taking advantage of this reprieve, Judah sent envoys to Rome. As they had a vested interest in keeping their Seleucid rivals weak, the Romans signed a treaty of mutual defense with the Maccabees in 161 BC, which legitimized Judah Maccabeus as a legitimate ruler of an independent Jewish state. Meanwhile,
so now, they took advantage and were like, we're going to send this to Rome, and Rome agreed. Now let's get a little context in the scriptures, okay, about that story. Now, really, I can read all the way till about 29, really, basically the whole chapter, because it's good. I might just jump around, but let's get a little context. Now, when Judas had heard of the Romans, that they were mighty and valiant men, such as would lovingly accept all that joined themselves unto them, and make a league of enmity with all that came unto them, and that they were men of great valor. It was told him also of their wars and noble act which they had done among the Galatians, and how they had conquered them and brought them under tribute. All right, and what they had done in the country of Spain for the winning of mines of silver and gold, which is there. All right, and that by their policy and patience they had conquered all the place, though it were very far from them. And the kings also came against them from the uttermost parts of the earth till they had discomforted them and given them a great overthrow, so that the rest did give them tribute every year. All right. And Rome, you know, being uh they was dealing with that iron, all right. Because even when you go in Daniel 7, that fourth beast, matter of fact, let me read, let me see. I'm gonna jump around. I'm gonna jump around. Verse 10, and that they having knowledge thereof sent against them a certain captain, and fighting with them slew many of them and carried them away captives. This is going into the Grecians. All right. Moreover, how the Grecians had determined to come and destroy them, and that they having knowledge thereof sent against them a certain captain, and fighting with them slew of many of them and carried away captive their wives and their children, and spoiled them, and took possession of their lands, and pulled down their strongholds, and brought them to be their servants unto this day. Because you know the Roman Empire took over the Greeks. All right. Daniel 7. All right. It was told him, besides how they destroyed and brought under their dominion all other kingdoms and isles that at any time resisted them. See, let's get Daniel 7 real fast, because when you go into it, Daniel 7 and 7, after this, I saw in a night vision, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. See, and that's going into that military might. That's why America is Rome 2.0, because America has what? Great military might. Okay. And the Romans dealt a lot with that iron. Okay. Because even when you go to, let's see, even when you go, let's see if we can let's pull something real fast. Let me see if I can get the big. Okay. So I hope you brothers and sisters can see this. Like it's showing up. Oh, it went to another. Okay. All right. You see how the legs of iron, right? And that's Rome. All right. Right now, we are in the iron and the clay. All right. That's dealing with, America, EU. All right. But this is dealing with the iron. Okay. And if you go in history, Romans, they dealt a lot with that iron. All right. Because iron is stronger than the brass. All right. Or the bronze. But the bronze is stronger than the silver, and the silver is stronger than the gold. Even though the gold is more valuable than the silver, the bronze, and the iron, each time it got stronger. Okay. So that great iron teeth going into military might, it devour and break in pieces and stamp the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. How was it diverse? Let's get the context. All right, because it's going to explain it. This is what Judas heard about Rome. All right. It says, verse 11 again, it was told him, besides how they destroyed and brought under their dominion all other kingdoms and isles that at any time resisted them. Right. Didn't it say in Daniel 7? What did it say? It devoured and break in pieces and stamped the residue. But it said it was diverse as well, right? Verse 12. But with their friends and such as relied upon them, they kept amity, and they had conquered kingdoms both far and nigh, insomuch as all that heard of their name were afraid of them. All right. But when you jump down, it says, I hope I ain't passed it. Oh, here we go. I'm afraid of them. Okay, verse 13. Also that whom they would help to a kingdom, those reign, and whom again they displaced, finally that they were greatly exalted. Yet for all this, none of them wore a crown or was clothed in purple, because purple is a color of royalty, to be magnified thereby. This what made them diverse, because they didn't wear the crowns. You don't see like Joe Biden and them in Rome 2.0 wearing crowns. You don't see that. You didn't see that in Rome. This is it right here, verse 15. Moreover, how they had made for themselves a Senate house. See, don't we have that today? America is nothing but the revived Roman Empire. Okay, that's why it's the iron with the clay, wherein 320 men sat in council daily, consulting always for the people, to the end they might be well ordered, and that they committed their government to one man every year. See, we have a president every 4 years. Okay, but this is the new Rome. America is the new Rome, who ruled over all their country, and that all were obedient to that one, and that there was neither envy nor emulation among them. All right, so basically, he sent it to Rome. All right, verse 19. Therefore they went therefore to Rome, which was a very great journey, and came into the Senate, where they spake and said, Judas Maccabeus, his brother, and the people of the Jews have sent us unto you to make a confederacy and peace with you, that we might be registered your confederates and friends. So this matter pleased the Romans. Okay, and they go into the let's see. This is was a part of the epistle. All right. The people of the Jews, okay, shall help them, as the time shall be appointed with all their heart. Neither shall they give anything unto them that make war upon them, or aid them with victuals, weapons, money, or ships, as it has seemed good unto the Romans, but they shall keep their covenants without taking anything therefore. In the same manner also, if war come first upon the nation of the Jews, the Romans shall help them with all their heart, according as the time shall be appointed. So you know how you got NATO, EU, all right, you got BRICS nations, same thing. Neither shall victuals be given to them that take part against them, or weapons, or money, or ships, as it hath seemed good to the Romans, but they shall keep their covenants, and that without deceit. According to these articles, did the Romans make a covenant with the people of the Jews. All right, so I just wanted to get that context. Let's continue.
Jewish state. Meanwhile, over in Antioch, the situation was growing volatile. King Demetrius I Soter rose to power following a political coup that saw the murder of boy King Antiochus V and his chief supporter Lysias. King Demetrius turned out to be more aggressive than his predecessors, and ignoring the Roman-Judean treaty, he dispatched one of his top generals, Bacchides, at the head of 22,000 men to retake Judea. Bacchides managed to march right up to the gates of Jerusalem unopposed, catching Judah Maccabeus completely by surprise. He had only 3,000 men with him, and to make matters worse, most of them fled the city upon seeing how direly outnumbered they were. Left with only 1,000 or so men, the Hammer of Israel opted to go out in a blaze of glory, charging out into the field outnumbered 20 to 1. Despite a valiant attempt, Judah and his men were overwhelmed and cut down to a man. Judah's brothers, Simeon and Jonathan, continued to fight on, eventually defeating Bacchides and retaking Jerusalem in the years that followed. The brothers and their successors would continue to fight against the Seleucids for 2 more decades, before the declining Hellenistic Empire became mired in its own internal corruption and civil wars. In 141 BC, Judea came fully under the control of the Hasmonean dynasty, and the descendants of Judah Maccabeus and his brothers would rule it as a fully independent kingdom for a time.
All right, you see, Judas passed on. All right, now you got Simon and Jonathan. All right, we can get a little bit. It's coming, and we can just close out. First Maccabees 9:18 through 18. Judas was also killed and the remnant fled. All right. Then Jonathan and Simon took Judas their brother and buried him in the sepulchre of his fathers in Modin. All right. Moreover, they bewailed him, and all Israel made great lamentation for him and mourned many days, saying, how is this valiant man fallen that delivered Israel? All right. So you can see Judas, of course, he had a great name in our nation. All right. Everybody was crying, making lamentations. He was a valiant man, and everybody like, dang. So now when you jump down to verse 23, it says, now after the death of Judas, that the wicked began to put forth their heads in all the coast of Israel, and there arose up all such as wrought iniquity. So you see now that they like, okay, Judas out of here. Now let's try to, you know, get back in power. The top rank guy fell, the mighty man fell. And the scriptures talk about that. Because let me continue on real quick. Verse 24. In those days also was there a very great famine, by reason whereof the country revolted and went with them. All right. And Bacchides, but I keep getting his name wrong. Bacchides chose the wicked men, and made them lords over the country. So you can see, let me go back because I don't want to hack that name.
31 BC, Judea came fully under the control of the Hasmonean dynasty, and the descendants of Judah Maccabean Empire became mired in its own internal corruption and civil wars. In the years that followed, the brothers and their successors would continue to fight against the Seleucids for 2 more decades, before the declining Hellenistic Empire became mired, seeing how direly outnumbered. Despite a valiant attempt, Judah and his men were overwhelmed and cut down to a man. Judah's brothers, Simeon and Jonathan, continued to fight on, eventually defeating Bacchides and...
All right, Bacchides, Salaki. I don't want to keep Bacchides. I didn't want to keep hacking. So the point I was really wanting to make is that, you know, Judas fell, being a valiant man. All right. He passed on. All right. And then after his death, the wicked began to put forth their heads. And it said Bacchides chose the wicked men and made them lords of the country. And again, the scriptures talk about this. Let's get it in Matthew 12 and 29. The scriptures say what? Let me see something real fast. The Lord said what? Or else how can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man? Then he will spoil his house. See? And at that time, the strong man was Judas that passed. All right. This is why Bacchides was making lords. They was putting their head together like, okay, he done. We got him. Verse 26, what happened? And they made inquiry and searched for Judas' friends and brought them unto Bacchides, who took vengeance of them and used them despitefully. All right, so he got his friends, probably slaughtered them, tortured them, whatever. So was there a great affliction in Israel, the like whereof was not since the time that a prophet was not seen among them. See, this is what happened when the strong man got binded up. when Judas passed, all right, now you got the wolves coming back in. For this cause, all Judas' friends came together and said unto Jonathan, all right, since thy brother Judas died, we have no man like him to go forth against our enemies and Bacchides, and against them of our nation that are adversaries to us. Now, therefore, we have chosen thee this day to be our prince and captain in his stead, that thou mayest fight as our battles. Upon this, Jonathan took the governance upon him at the time and rose up instead of his brother Judas. All right. So now you got Judas. I mean, now you got Jonathan taking over. Okay. And basically, once that happened, you know, uh, as you can see in the documentary, let's get it. Let's go back.
Descendants of Judah Maccabeus and his brothers would rule it as a fully independent kingdom for a time. It is worth noting that even after this successful bid for independence, elements of the Hellenistic language and culture remained visible in Jewish society for centuries, especially after they were expelled from their homeland by the Romans after the Great Jewish Rebellion and forced to integrate as a diaspora community across a notoriously
And
Greek.
see, this is where you get the Gentile, the crust. This, if you're studying, this is why Apostle Paul had to make his journey. It wasn't to go talk to Greeks, and it wasn't to go talk to Edomites and the Chinamen and the African. No, it was to pull back all the Israelites that were spread it out in the diaspora. All right, to bring them back into the fold, just like we have been brought back into the fold. It was a time where we thought, yeah, we're from Egypt, we're African Americans, okay, and thought we were Hamites, but no, we're Israelites. Okay, it was a point in your life that you didn't know that. You just thought you was black. You just thought you was, you know, I'm an African. No, our people did dwell in Africa, of course, but we're Israelites. We're not Hamites. We're Shemites. And those Gentiles that Paul was talking to was through the diaspora. All right, because we fled Roman persecution and went into West Africa. All right. And this is telling you, this is a part of it. And he said it was Greek.
Forced to integrate as a diaspora community remained visible in Jewish society would rule it as a fully independent kingdom for a time. It is worth noting that even after this successful bid for independence, elements of the Hellenistic language and culture remained visible.
And then you have something called Greco-Roman. All right. Because these Romans adopted a lot from the Grecians. All right. And our people were still Hellenized. Those were the Israelites Paul was sent to. He wasn't sent to go, talk to a Edomite. No, only Israel can get salvation. The Bible is for Israelites. The Lord is dealing with Israelites, the elected at this time. The Lord, our Lord Yahweh, who the world ignorantly called Jesus, was sent for Israelites. He stated that himself. All right. Even when you go here, and I just want to make this quick point. This really is the lesson. But when you go to James 1 and 1, what do it say? James, a servant of the Most High and of the Lord Yahweh Mashiach, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. See? Which are scattered abroad.
Centuries, especially
To the 12 tribes, right? To the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. You see that scattering? This is what he's going into. All right. So I just wanted to make that point. All right. But this has been, the Maccabean Revolt part 3. Lord willing, it was edifying. All right. To the next lesson. Shalom.